Hey there, White Sox fans. We are creeping ever closer to the MLB season. And welcome to Sox Populi number 141, where we are going to be discussing the MLB with some of my very, very favorite friends from Southside Sox and the Chicago White Sox universe. That does include copy editor extraordinaire, Chrystal O'Keefe, Tommy Barbee, otherwise known as Father Soxivus, but now it's a Summer Soxivus. He is with us to discuss White Sox. Hey, if you missed that, go back and listen to it. Not now. Listen to this one, then go back and listen to the White Sox podcast. Come on, people, get with it. Season starting. Super Joseph Resis, crazy predictions. He wrote a whole piece on it, again, linked in this post. Crazy post, how the year is going to end for the White Sox and the Guardians, and people are going to be crying and people are going to be laughing, but that's what Joe does every year. Dante Jones, hat switch, acknowledged, and he's back with us talking MLB, and he's going to have a little splaining to do. He may want to have a little side discussion before we get to it with Tommy Barbee, because he's done this before and he got his hand wrapped by the ruler. And Dante, you're going to be under the gun here in a minute or two. First off, let's talk a little bit about some Fans First Sports Network Sox Populi news, and that is Chrystal O'Keefe. Listen, Crystal's so awesome. I was like, I don't know, like a month ago or something, like, hey, Chrystal, you got to do more stuff. Like, she needs to do more stuff. But hey, Chrystal, yeah, you got to do more stuff. And this is how I talk to everybody at Southside Sox. You got to do stuff. But I said, hey, listen, maybe you want to share hosting the podcast, maybe do a couple week, whatever. And her idea coming back at me was, hey, you know what? Sure, I'll do that too, Brett. I'll take over all your stuff because nobody wants to listen to you. And again, that's tabled, but probably still pending. But exactly. But what Chrystal is going to do is she put together a podcast concept. It's still malleable, but the concept is a visiting dugout. And it's going to be we're going to do Know Your Enemy. Brian O'Neill's taking on those for us in print, but in podcast, talking to either other Fans First Sports Network sites or folks Chrystal knows, obviously, from the wide world of baseball, doing series preview podcast. We don't know if we're going to hit every one, how often they're going to be. It's still coming together, but this is how Crystal's stepping up and taking over some podcast action. Listen, you're going to want to listen to those. I'm not saying make Sox Populi Mothership, optional. Please don't ever do that. But really, if you got to choose one, you might want to listen to Chrystal. Anyway, Chrystal, thanks for doing that. This is going to be a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing that to start getting rolling.
Yeah, we all know that I am the best host with White Sox podcasts. So looking forward to it.
No argument. She does know the difference between MLB and the MLB. No doubt about it. Okay, listen, again, don't go back and listen to it now. What are you doing? But, we address the White Sox and pretty much the AL Central, I think. Maybe we'll touch on it a little bit. But there's a lot to get to because it's all the other 5 divisions. It's the whole wide world of baseball. Frankly, it's often a lot more interesting to talk about than the White Sox. So that said, let's start digging into, as Adrian Serrano will also join us for the MLB podcast portion of all this. I think he just wants to give us some factoid that he threw in our chat about how much money the White Sox are giving AJ Pollock and Leo Garcia to not play for them. But, noted, and it's disgusting, and we don't really want to be any more depressed about that. But then talking about how good the Yankees are isn't that exciting either. Maybe let's talk about where there are maybe some of the biggest differences. I don't know. How about this? Let me throw it to the field. What jumps out at you about this MLB season that pertains to our predictions that we want to make sure to catch and that you want to mention right off? And maybe that can spur discussion because it's just too big a world to have to just take on.
I'll go out on a limb because I'm the only person that picked the Angels to win the West. Yeah. The reason being that if you have Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, just like, call me crazy, somehow that team should be really freaking good. And they're not, and they haven't been. But this has to be the year that finally they're actually a good team. So I think that resources will get thrown at this team, unlike previous years, where they actually make it work. And Houston, frankly, I think might have some injury concerns as they are getting older. So that is my reasoning for the Angels not blowing everybody out of the water, but just kind of squeaking in that AL West title.
Okay, Dante, I threatened you with the floodlight, but I'm sorry, I got to pull it back, and it's going on Tommy, because Tommy, at least admit this to me. I'm not saying you're the only one ever in these 3 years of making these picks, because I think maybe Maliki did it once. You've picked the Angels before. That's correct. Yes.
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. As long as we know this
Yeah.
is an addiction issue and not, necessarily sober
I took a year off and now I'm coming back to it. So yeah.
I mean, in theory, you're exactly right, because almost every one of our MVP picks, as we'll get to, is either one or the other. So
exactly,
you're right, Tommy, but you're going to be wrong again. Although, I with relish, it's nice to see. I mean, notes for Chrystal on our first podcast. It is going to be interesting to see Houston just erode and crumble. And sorry, Altuve. I don't know. Maybe he can strap more things to his body somewhere, and it'll help his the rehab of his
new device. Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, we teased it already, so I'm going to just get right to Dante. Dante, no, you did not pick the Cubs to win the division.
Stay strong.
Your friend Tommy did that last year, but you did pick them to get to the wild card. Some reasoning there besides the fact that a father's love.
So my reason for picking Cubs to win the wild card, I mean not win the wild card, is almost the exact same as the White Sox, but they're worse. Like, my reasoning is they have just enough pieces that I can see them squeaking into the wild card at best. And also, it's Marcus Stroman is a jerk and he's an idiot, but he throws baseballs good sometimes. Cody Bellinger, if he can rediscover how to play baseball, could be a really good get. Seiya Suzuki's good at baseball. Dansby Swanson's another asshole that's good at baseball. Like, they remind me of some of the other Cubs teams that were mediocre, but could just fight, scratch and claw the way to not win a division but to get it into the wild card. I think the Cardinals are gonna be okay. I think that the pitching is my biggest concern for Cardinals, and the Brewers I think will win the division handedly. I picked them last year. I was wrong as ever last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with being wrong again this year, but I would rather be wrong with the Cubs being better than the Cards than better than the Brewers than the Cards being better than Brewers. And as for the rest of that division, we don't need to talk about the rest of that division. When one of those teams is third highest paid player, it's Ken Griffey Jr.
Yeah. And I believe at least one person picked the Reds to be the worst team in the National League. So it could happen. Poor Joey Votto, but could happen.
The Rockies still exist. That's all I have to say.
This is true. I mean, I gotta say that was an area. All right, let's jump to it. That was an area where there was some real difference in terms of what and of course Nasty Nats, easy pick. Rockies, Pirates, Reds, Diamondbacks. Yeah, Diamondbacks still exists too. I mean, that's a race to the bottom. I guess there's a lot of feasters and a lot of feasties in the NL, but I mean, I suppose that's the case in the AL as well. Okay, yeah, other storylines that maybe we need to get to, a player award or a division race that jumped out at you, or there was a hard pick for any of you?
Yeah, I admire the bravery picking the Angels. I just have to say that much. I give a lot of credit for that pick. Yeah, we had to have someone not pick the Astros. I personally was not brave enough, but I do like the pick. Yeah, I'm not super bearish on the Angels as a team, or I'm not super bullish as the Angels as a team personally. One team in that division who I do think could make a bit of a surprise postseason run would be the Rangers. Really like some of the depth that they've built up recently. They actually spent some money, and I could see that paying a lot of dividends for them this year. I do think they'll win one of the wild card spots. They'll get a playoff series victory. So I think the Rangers are a team that I'm able to go a little bit out on a limb saying that they're going to surprise some people this year. One other thing that I wanted to mention is back when Charlie Tilson was on the White Sox, we were reminded very frequently about where he is from. So I'm need to give a warning. I think that Kodai Senga, I'm going to probably remind you where he's from in Japan. many times throughout his career because he's just a few trains. He's like his hometown is just a few train stops away from where I studied abroad when I was over there. So I'm gonna be probably pretty annoying with that too. And I think he wins Rookie of the Year this year.
Okay, it's fair. And I have to admit, when I saw that name pop up, I felt very jealous of not having thought of that. I'm stupid. I may still change it. I know it's like, the podcast has been recorded, so I can't change. Oh, forget it. Come on. I'm running the thing. I'll change whatever I want. So I might, because I slept right through that one. That wasn't very wise. Joe, I have to acknowledge that I really appreciate a bold call out of Tommy there. And then you completely undermined yourself by going Rangers in the wild card.
Rangers? They might as well spent $500,000 on Bayer. Like what they did, all they did
Malachi picked them to win the West.
I know.
Hey, my brother in baseball did what?
Because I really want to hear that story.
He's their pick.
I'm gonna have to go to
one
his house
person
and
picked
talk
the
to him about
Rangers.
that one.
I thought that I would be more on my own picking the Blue Jays in the East, but apparently a lot of people also agree with me that team is very quietly pretty good at everything.
I have them as a wild card. I think that's what I put them.
Shout out to Ashley Sanders, not with us on this podcast, not with us in our predictions this year for the first time of 3 years, but her MLB, because she owns the MLB show franchise now, they did simulate the season. This is something I shared with the staff, and had the Blue Jays winning 108 games. So, I mean, there's a little hype, I guess, around Toronto. I'm not sure how you get to 108, probably for any team, certainly Toronto, but yeah, I guess it's not the sexiest surprise pick. It's no Rangers. Let's put it that way. It's no Rangers.
I will say
that like Jacob deGrom is going to be good on the Rangers, because he's gonna just like his arm's gonna fall off at some point. Was that his thinking? Was like, oh, Jacob deGrom, best pitcher in baseball, but like, just kidding. His arm is going to fall off this season.
A lot of Mets fever spreading to all the teams, even performing.
I also, in defense of Tommy's Angels, they do have now WBC and Team Mexico star Patrick Sandoval coming in hot this year. So that's a 25-year-old that looked really good in a high-pressure situation. So hopefully maybe they can get some other pitchers that can pitch halfway as well as Shohei does.
Tommy faced the firing line, fought it off, got some back from Adrian. I might change my pick to Angels now. But again, I just had to get you to admit that this is like every other year thing, Tommy.
It is.
I still picked them.
I'm just like, you have Ohtani and Trout. There's no reason why, like, every game, there's something that has never happened in baseball that they do, and they still lose the game. Like, it doesn't make sense in my brain that they continue to be this bad, having two of the most significant players to play in this generation.
Yeah, it's tough to tackle too much of what we did with our MLB picks, of course, from the MLB picks, because they're all over the place. It's not, I mean, again, keep throwing out things that pop up, and certainly we did have some interesting choices. And again, it wasn't just only Ohtani versus Trout for MVP, although the majority of people picked one of those two Angels. So Tommy, you're on to something. But in terms of a discussion, take a quick break, come back, and let's go back. I said we weren't going to talk about it, but let's talk about AL Central, because we didn't really do it in the White Sox podcast. So we can address it and allow Adrian to get a few digs in on Sox. He didn't, because he wasn't able to get to us for the White Sox, and he can throw out his number of the $500 million that the White Sox are paying guys who aren't playing for them in 2023 and make us all feel real good. So get your Kleenex tissue box. Oh, that could be a prediction of the sponsor during this break, because the Fans First Sports Network does have sponsorship. We are taking a break. We promise we'll be back in a minute, and I'll stop talking about it right now. White Sox fans, it is Sox Populi Podcast number 141. Where did the first 140 come from? Oh, I don't know. Look at our feed. They're there. Check them out. There's a lot of great back issues, as it were. So enjoy it. Maybe even once or twice you'll hear me say the MLB. No, you wouldn't. You'd never hear me say the MLB. I'm just playing with Chrystal, but she's still going to hammer me for it. And that, by the way, Chrystal O'Keefe, hostess of Visiting Dugout. If you're thinking about the Visitors Dugout or Visiting Dugout, it could still change. Visiting Dugout podcast series we're going to be starting, probably like, I don't know, 24 hours or so. Forecasting upcoming opponents, shooting the shit, whatever, who knows what it's going to be. That's the fun thing. You don't know what you're going to get from Chrystal. It's going to be great stuff. Listen to it before you listen to me. That's a no-brainer. Come on, please. All right. AL Central. Let's talk about that because we didn't really get down to the nitty gritty of the AL Central because, frankly, who really wants to do that? That's a death march if you ever. Okay, listen, 22, at least at the time of recording, we had 22 people picking this year, a world record amount of pickers for our prediction little contest here, of which I've never won or come close. Cleveland was picked by 10 different writers. The White Sox snuck in with 7. Minnesota Twins, sexy, sneaky, popular pick, 5. And, we discussed in the White Sox podcast, go listen to it, not now. Don't pause and listen, just later. The different permutation of how the White Sox get into the playoffs, even though they win 25 games. So we already covered that, but let's just break down the division. Do most of you see this being a tight division? Do you see one of these two teams, who you picked, running away with it? How do you see the AL Central shaping up?
Is going to be one of the most mid divisions we have ever seen in our lifetimes. It's not going to be a fun division. I think that was back before the 94 strike. The AL West actually had every team under 500 at the time of the strike. I expect there to be a significant chunk of the season where every team is hovering around 500, just fighting to get out of purgatory, which is everything that they'll be dealing with anyway. Like I said in yesterday's pod, I picked the Twins to win the division because Pablo Lopez has a pretty good arm. That helps. If Byron Buxton is healthy for 140 games, which not gonna happen because he's made out of glass, but if he's healthy for 140 games, he is one of the best players in baseball. And overall, they have a solid, not super great roster, and no one in this division has a great roster. The Royals and the Tigers. Congrats on being able to host the Miguel Cabrera retirement tour. That's about the best I got for them. And the Royals, we'll check in with them in 4 years when we see what happens with Bobby Witt Jr. and MJ Melendez and all those people. But it's a 3-team race, and all 3 teams are mediocre. That's the only reason they're above the other 2 teams who are just straight up bad rebuilding.
I was going to say that Dante might have a little simpatico with Chrystal with the way he's talking, because Chrystal is envisioning sort of the scenario you put together, which is I believe a below 500 team winning the AL Central. Except Dante, I got to say, you picked 2 AL Central teams to make the playoffs, so there's something going on here with math, or else the NL is just going to kick the shit out of the AL all year. I don't know what it is, but
I'm thinking, because okay. I don't think the AL is as good as the NL this year. It's very top heavy, and the NL feels a bit more balanced this year. For example, I would love the Angels to be as good as other teams. They have probably the 2 best players in baseball. The issue is that same issue that's similar with the White Sox. The GM's an idiot and does not know how to build a roster that can actually maintain and keep things going when someone gets hurt. Mike Trout gets injured every year. That's just a thing. He is one of the best baseball players ever. He also likes to doesn't like to, but he also rides the injury bench pretty often. And they don't have replacements to replace any of his production at all, it feels like. That's kind of the thing I'm noticing. When we talked about teams in yesterday's pod about the Astros, the Dodgers that can replace players, the Angels aren't one of those teams. The White Sox aren't one of those teams. You have an entire division called the AL Central that's filled with teams that if 2 people go down, they're all screwed. And I don't see that as much in the NL, so that's my main thing.
Dante, dragging the AL, seeing the Cubs in the playoffs, I'm going to have to recommend my diagnosis you didn't ask for: more time with grandma, less time with pops. Other thoughts on the AL Central from the rest of you in terms of how do you see this shaking out? Because we didn't really get down to any of the nitty gritty of it, aside from just saying the White Sox and some of us trying to hold our laughter and others saying, yeah, it could happen.
So I forget that the Royals exist sometimes.
But those Padres are so sick.
The Royals have Adam Hazley syndrome.
Yeah, I forget they exist. So that's why, and the Tigers will be okay. they're not going to be good still. Like they've got a ways to go before they're good. So yeah, we're going to finish third, even if we have the most mediocre year. We're at least a little bit above the Tigers and the Royals.
I need to interject and point out that among our 22 pickers, nobody, 3 picked the Tigers, nobody picked the Royals to be the worst team in the American League. And that's crazy. I'll call it myself because I didn't either. That's crazy because the Royals,
that's also because the A's are paying their entire roster less than Rick Hahn just paid AJ
Exactly.
Fair. But those 3 Tigers picks is like, okay, well, wait, there's another team like right next door in the division that, they might want to step forward as everyone else steps back. Adrian, Tommy, I mean, Joe's like, we know who's going to win the AL Central, but Tommy, Adrian, other thoughts about Adrian, you went Guardians like the majority. Tommy, I think you went Twins. Thoughts on how that's going to wrangle out, and is it going to be close?
I think it's going to be decently close. I have all of the top 3 teams in the AL Central winning somewhere in the 80 to 87 range, depending. It could swing, but like those are bad teams at the bottom in Kansas City and Detroit, but like they're definitely going to beat the other 3 occasionally just because nobody's that good. I picked Cleveland mainly because Cleveland just does everything pretty well. They run the bases. They just stick around in games and they can pitch. And if you can pitch, you're going to win games. Like, I just think that they're the best of the mediocre teams. I don't think they can beat anybody when it comes to actual like talent on the field. As soon as somebody starts hitting homers against them, like it's very tough for them to get back into those games. But just the Twins and the White Sox need so much to go perfectly, where the Guardians just don't need the floor to drop out on them. They just need to be okay, and they probably win that division. It'd be interesting. I haven't really dived into the AL versus the NL conversation because I think there's like 7 good teams in the AL that I would consider like actual playoff contenders, and might be a team or 2 less in the NL, but I'd have to really dig in there. But yeah, these new schedules are going to be interesting, and I don't think it helps the AL Central, who is kind of stuffed with teams that don't really want to spend to get better. They want to hope for the best.
With the power of your Angels pick behind you, pushing you forward, Tommy, explain to me how the Twins are going to win this division. And that's not a challenge. I'm not trying to challenge you. But...
No, I know. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm actually more, I guess, optimistic about the AL Central than everyone else is in terms of the Twins and the Guardians, because I think they are a distinct level above the White Sox in that they have players in the minors that are pretty much ready to go. So even if an injury comes up, we've seen it with the Guardians last year. They have guys that they just throw in. You probably have never heard of them, and they are pitching or hitting incredibly well. The Twins have those guys now that are starting to play with regularity. So I think that the drop-off isn't that much, and I do like the additions that the Twins made. The fact that the Guardians just are kind of like, well, things worked out last year, we should be fine. That has never gone well in the last decade of baseball, so that's where I see kind of regression happening there, where the Twins have improved. But even with the teams like the Tigers and to some extent the Royals, they have so much young talent that I could just see them being those annoying teams that teams like the Sox consistently lose to, just like they have in previous years. So as much as we want to say, oh, the AL Central's mid, so the White Sox should be fine, the White Sox are the definition of mid. They have been the textbook definition for as long as they've been in baseball, and they will continue to be that way. So I don't think we can just assume that the Tigers and the Royals are a tier below the White Sox. I really think it's kind of all 3.
We spend all our podcasts, not all, 98% of our podcasts addressing what the White Sox don't do and what they do, and how ridiculously idiotic it is, and the fact that they're now paying Leary $11 million not to play for them. And as Adrian's pointed out, that between him and Pollock, they're paying a ton, millions of dollars for negative WAR. But let's and I think the majority of us picked Cleveland to win this division. Cleveland, they might not have got measurably better. I would argue they got a little better. Okay, let's say the same. They haven't done anything to fall back to the pack. So what would be the thinking that says that Cleveland, is necessarily going, especially in this division, is going to, like fall back to earth, and now they're an 83 win team? It doesn't, was it all just luck? It didn't seem like it was just luck. They just they just stuck it to, the AL Central for sure, and really the rest of the American League.
Yeah, I think you just you take away a couple of those little the gimme wins from the extra AL Central against them. But like, you're right, like both the Twins or the White Sox, were they to win this bad division, need to step up and overcome. So Cleveland's just the easy pick because they didn't really lose much or gain much. The other two teams need a lot to go right. But yeah, like Tommy was saying, like, would it surprise me if Spencer Torkelson hits 35 home runs this year? Like, no, it wouldn't shock me. Like, they have talent. Bobby Witt Jr. could be a 5-WAR player, so like that equals more wins and but I think that affects all three teams equally. So then again, when everything is kind of equal, I'll take the team that needs the least to go right. Although they did have a scare today with Tristan McKenzie, and that could change the algebra of the division. But for everybody, we also had Yoan Moncada walk out today, and that changes things, clearly. So anything could still happen. But if I'm putting my money on it, I'm just going to take the safe bet because I don't trust any of these three organizations to do what it has to do to win.
Those injuries are where I think there's a serious concern for the Guardians, because they are relying solely on those young arms to kind of carry them through the season, and
hasn't stopped him for like 8 years though.
They do have the best player in the division though, so it's a point for them too. As long as they got Jose Ramirez, like, it's gonna be, I'm gonna roll with them. They're gonna be okay. Like, they got the best guy in the division
for sure.
Yeah, the most disrespected player in baseball, probably Jose Ramirez. I forgot about that guy for a half a second because, again, the disrespect. Like, oh yeah, the guy Josh Bell. Oh wait, Jose Ramirez exists.
Yeah. Adrian, you missed yesterday's podcast, and I need to bring you up to speed. Yoan Moncada, he just says, "Feel good, not bad." He's gonna be fine. He's gonna play 160 games this year. Feel good, not bad.
That's what
Don't forget this dude
also says.
Yeah, I said the leg injuries of 2022 are out, and the back injuries of 2023 are in. We're moving up.
No,
just keep wearing the romper.
I have him as my best.
Yeah, that's true. Let's hop to this. World Series picks. I don't have it in front of me, although I could just click it and look. How confident are you in your World Series pick? Is it a no-brainer in your eyes who's going to just cruise the World Series, or do you see this as being some sort of like, classic 7-game, or just incredible playoffs where we're going to play into like Thanksgiving because the games are also close?
I am very unconfident. The last time I was correct about a World Series pick was before I wrote for this blog. It was 2015 with the Royals. That was the last time I was right. In fact, 2 years ago, I picked the Padres, and that's who I'm picking this year. And they were very disappointing that year, like perhaps the most disappointing team in all of baseball in 2021. But I am picking them again. I do like them a lot. They re-signed Machado to that big extension. They're getting Tatis back. They got Bogarts. They have a lot of pitching. I have a hunch, at least, they're going to make a lot of noise this year.
Sox Math's Joe Resis could just have easily said, "Yeah, I get it right every year." But see, look, and yet we still bring him back every year, even though he never gets the World Series right. What am I thinking? All right, Joe, you're on probation. You've got a year. The Padres better win this year. Chrystal, Crystal's picking. Oh, the Astros. Oh, the Astros.
See, I just think that they have 1 year left because a good point was made earlier. They're getting old. Yeah. I say they've got 1 year left of winning, and that's only because I want Jose Abreu to win his ring, and then I can just wipe the Astros out of my mind completely.
Mm-hmm.
I also picked the Astros. Less about Jose Abreu, although I think that does help. But in the end, we just saw in the WBC, and it comes true more often than not. You just need to pitch well ultimately to win, and their pitching staff is just so good top to bottom. They just they don't have holes like like other teams have. Like all of their relievers, I think there's like 2 guys all of 22 that like pitched over a certain amount of innings that had a above 3.5 ERA. Like they just whatever they do down there, it works for them, and the pitching staff is solid from top to bottom. And I think that again, it's going to be exciting. I'm excited for this playoffs, regardless of what happens with this 2023 White Sox season. I think there's a lot of really good teams at the top of the MLB right now, so I think there's going to be some great matchups come playoff time. But we just got to watch the White Sox, unfortunately, until it happens.
Now, Dante, you, unlike Joe, you think the Padres are the class of the NL, and they're going to just sort of go number 1 seed and go all the way to win the World Series. You just don't see much of an obstacle, especially with the big brother Dodgers. Or you think they shook that off last year by beating them in the playoffs?
Yeah, I think that helped a lot. And also, like, I just want the Padres to win because I like teams to spend money. And the more often we have teams that spend money winning, the more often and more likely it is for people to say, in other organizations, say the 5 AL Central teams, that maybe we should spend on winning because that works. Also, I picked the Astros to be the team they beat because I love you, Jose, but sometimes you got these teams have to take L's. Also, I picked Yordan Alvarez as MVP, so call him what's called that's I can't think of what consolation. That's a consolation prize for them. So congrats, you finally get your MVP, but you do not get a ring. And in fact, I think the Padres will win 106 games, probably something like that, some ridiculous number. They just have a team that's built to, like, if everything goes right, to win. Now, as we've seen in 2021, shit can hit the fan real quick. As we saw in 2022 with Fernando Tatis Jr., sometimes shit can hit the fan real quick. So we're gonna have to see what happens. I still just think that it will happen, though.
Dante Jones waving the red cape in front of the Los Angeles Dodgers. We do have someone join us very late in the podcast, in a new addition to the Indianapolis field office. Please do explain Chrystal O'Keefe.
Yeah, hi. She was whining. This is Willow. She's a
Hey, Willow.
She's just
Willow wants team suspend too.
And she was whining at my feet. So she's now joining late in the game.
Snapshot. Speaking of teams that spend money, and let's not dig into how dirty that money is, because Lord knows Brett's going to get yelled at. Tommy Barbee picks the New York Mets to win the World Series. Please to explain, right. Tommy Barbee.
Speaking of spending money, Steve Cohen will spend over billions of dollars if he has to get a damn ring this year. That man will run out onto the field, kidnap players, bring them back to Flushing to play for a Mets. He will not care. This is their year. And also the NL East disrespect has to stop, because I think that's one of the most underrated divisions between the Phillies, the Braves, the Mets. Like, that's a very stacked division that more folks should be talking about.
Let me make something clear, Tommy. The tomahawk chop is fucking bullshit, and I fucking hate it, and it's got to stop. But the fact that nobody's picking it, I know Joe had him as the best in the league, and there were a few picks. Nobody's picking. I picked
Ronnie as the MVP for the league because I saw him hit a ridiculous bomb. I think they're gonna mess. Like, I think they have a chance to win the division. Like,
I went Dodgers over them in the playoffs.
So good. I think the Braves just will smoke the Dodgers if that happens.
I think the house money is the Dodgers, but to the Mets, Cohen just wants that trophy before he's got to go back to jail. All right, never went back. He never went to jail. Don't sue me, Cohen. Anyway, all right, that's a whole nother topic, and I will never be invited on any Mets podcast. I'm sorry, Mets. Anyhow, well, geez, man, we talk a lot about the White Sox still, even in this podcast. Something we missed here. Do we need to address more about this coming season? We didn't really talk rookies or anything, but it's such a crapshoot. Probably easier to read than talk about. But what did I miss?
Shohei.
Yes. Now that's a real good head-to-head. MVP pick. I think Shohei, he clearly got more votes. In fact, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Only a couple Mike Trout picks.
If Shohei
Okay.
stays healthy, like they're gonna give it to him, especially after the WBC. Like normally you would wonder if they have like the 2 year in a row fatigue thing, but like because he's coming in so hot, they're gonna give it to him as long as he doesn't die.
He's going to get the
Wait, time out.
WBC bump 7 months
Yeah.
later.
Did we forget
Yeah.
about one Arson Judge who won MVP last year?
Yeah,
So
That's true. We don't talk disrespect.
but that's also more of a reason why they're going to give it to Shohei now.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like Arson Judge, Aaron Judge got saved Shohei. He gave him a skip year, so it means that Shohei has a chance to win it this year. I'm still going Jordan Alvarez, but Shohei's really high up on that list.
Shohei is a literal Disney prince. Like he's just perfection, and I love him. And like, I'm not very patriotic for this country, so I was like really pulling for Japan anyway. I love Japan, so I am just Shohei all the way. It's all I want to watch is him all year.
That's podcast host Chrystal O'Keefe visiting Dugout, coming to a podcast on Sox Populi near you. Listen, you gotta listen. It's your duty. Not your patriotic duty. It's your duty. Listen to this doggone podcast. Isn't it cool? Not to say that there are a lot of villains who are the best players or whatever, but it's really cool to have a guy who I think, Chrystal, you put it perfect. It's really is sort of a hero, and then you got a cross-cultural hero. That's pretty cool. I mean, I hope the next hero is going to be just as great as him, but it's really cool right now for as long as this is going to be to have a guy who's like, wow. I mean, how can you not? You can be.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the one that like really helps grow the game. I know we talk about like certain players, certain nationalities, like expanding this game, making it not just a bunch of like dudes from America. I think Shohei is going to be the one that like really just breaks it open, and other kids can realize, hey, I could be a baseball player one day, like Ohtani. Like he's the hero that we needed.
Monday, we had our Sharing Sox season predictions podcast. Tuesday was White Sox. Today, of course, is MLB. Tomorrow, pregame podcast. The season's upon us. We'll have a postgame podcast as well. Somewhere in there, this rumored visiting dugout's going to be playing with Chrystal. Again, all your listenership, go there. Come on, you listen to me for it. Pause this. Go listen to her right now. If it's already up, go listen to her right now. And then, we got the home opener coming. So we got podcasts just coming. I mean, you're not going to know what to do with all these podcasts, but lucky you on Sox Populi and Fans First Sports Network. Thanks to the 5 of you for joining me here on this one. Let's do this again real soon. Too many, so let's take a little break, but real soon. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll be back sooner than you're ready for.